Isn't that right, Daddy?
If you're a horror movie enthusiast, I'm sure the Ouija board is no stranger to you. The magical and mysterious communication device used to talk to inhabitants of the other realm. Have you ever wondered about the origin of the Ouija board? Where did it come from? What does Ouija mean? Who discovered that these boards could establish contact with the supernatural? Welcome to Marvel Videos, where today we will try to answer these questions. Let's dig in. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Once.
Origins of the Ouija board. From silly game to spiritualism, the Ouija board's origins have been traced back to 1100 AD China, where people of the Song dynasty used something called Fuji, or automatic writing, to talk with the souls of people who have passed. People used a planchette, which was a small board that resembled the shape of a heart, with a hole near its tapering end, where a pencil would be inserted to communicate with the dead. This writing technique was considered sacred and was used only under great supervision and special rituals. It was later banned by the Qing dynasty. There are many theories about the planchette as well. The word dates back to medieval France, but there are claims that planchette was a powerful French medium. Although the idea of the Ouija board is quite old, the Ouija board itself did not exist till the 19th century. As the Civil War broke out in the United States of America, the number of people dying from war increased, which also meant an increase in the number of mourning relatives who would do anything to hear just one more word from their lost loved ones. People began to seek salvation from their grief through mediums and spirituality. In 1886, Charles Kennard, who lived in Chesterton, Maryland, happened upon the idea of the Ouija board when he placed his teacup over a breadboard and moved it subconsciously. He shared this idea with E.C. Reich, who was a cabinet and coffin maker, and asked him to make some boards for him with alphabets on them. There is a lot of dispute over this story, as E.C. Reich claims that he was the one who came up with the initial idea, and Kennard stole it from him. Either way, these boards were a huge commercial success in Chesterton. In 1890, Kennard met with a lawyer in Baltimore named Elijah Bond and decided to partner up with him to sell these boards. They decided to have a seance with Elijah Bond's sister-in-law, Helen Peters Nosworthy, who was a known spiritualist and medium. During the seance, Nosworthy asked the board what it would like to be called, and it spelled out the word Ouija. When asked what it meant, the board is said to have spelled good luck. Skeptics of the Ouija board have pointed out that since Helen Peters Nosworthy was an elite upper-class woman, she is likely to have read the works of the English novelist Maria Louise Ramée, whose pen name was Ouida. So when she was moving the planchette, she might have had that word in her subconscious. Whether it was the subconscious of Helen Peters Nosworthy or supernatural instruction, Bond decided to name the boards Ouija and added the yes and no to the boards. Elijah Bond filed for a patent and was initially laughed out of rooms by the clerks in the patent office in Washington. As a final effort, he approached the chief clerk, who told him that he would grant Bond the patent if the board spelled out his name. The chief clerk watched in horror as the board did just that, and although shaken, granted him the patent. By 1901, William Fuld took over the sales of the Ouija board. Ouija boards soon began to sell like hotcakes. Buyers were usually those who were curious about the supernatural, people who missed their dead relatives and wanted to speak to them, or just bored youngsters who wanted a way to spend their time. There were only a few who used these boards seriously, and it was just a silly parlor game for most, since the social norms of that time looked down upon unmarried women and men touching each other. Playing with a Ouija board was an excellent choice for spending time together without breaking social norms. The board would initially be placed on the knees of the participants and their hands resting on parallel sides of the planchette. It soon became a popular date night game as well. In 1966, the Parker Brothers, popular board game manufacturers who also produced Monopoly, Clue, Trivial Pursuit, and Scrabble, bought the rights to sell Ouija boards from William Fuld's company. The same year, Ouija boards outsold Monopoly, which had consistently maintained its reputation as the most sold board game.
Something is wrong with Doris. She's experiencing something.
Evil and sinister, the reputation of the Ouija board. So then, how did this casual and fun board game become associated with demonic possessions? According to Robert Murch, the founder and chairperson of the Talking Board Historical Society, The 1973 movie The Exorcist played a major role in villainizing Ouija board. In the movie, the child named Reagan plays with a Ouija board she finds and ends up getting possessed by the demon she talks to. From then onwards, Ouija boards have been generally seen in a negative light and have been associated with dark spirits or demons. But The Exorcist is not the sole culprit, as the Catholic Church and many Christian denominations were staunch critics of spiritualism. From the beginning, they believed that spiritualism was just another name for witchcraft, and Ouija board users were directly communicating with the devil. Others also claim that speaking to supernatural beings and spirits revealed information that was only known to God, and hence, the board itself was an instrument of Satan. Psychic investigator and ex-spiritualist J. Godfrey Roppert was commissioned by Pope Pius X to write a book warning Catholics of the evils of the Ouija board. His book, The New Black Magic and the Truth About the Ouija Board, released in 1919, instructed Christians to avoid the Ouija board at all costs. Aleister Crowley, a popular occultist, philosopher, and novelist, also held an active interest in Ouija boards and wanted to create his own design, but this plan never came to fruition. There are some eerie and haunting real stories associated with the Ouija board, which have explained its rather sinister reputation. The Exorcist, which we spoke about earlier, is an adaptation of a novel of the same name by William Peter Blatty. Blatty based his novel on the real-life possession of Roland Doe. Roland Doe is the pseudonym given to the 14-year-old boy who underwent a series of exorcisms conducted by the Catholic Church in the late 1940s. Roland Doe, also documented in some records as Robbie Mannheim, was an only child who grew up with his aunt, a spiritualist, who introduced him to Ouija board. When he was 14 years old, Roland's aunt passed away, and he soon began to show signs of possession. His initial exorcisms failed, as he often attacked the priests, and the exorcisms had to be halted before they ended. Priests have claimed to see shaking beds, flying objects, and words suddenly appearing carved into Roland's skin. During the last exorcism, Roland broke the nose of Father Walter H. Halloran, a Jesuit priest, but they finished the exorcism, and Roland has been reported to have led a normal and ordinary life after his ordeal. Members of the American rock band, the Mars Volta, went through a series of bad experiences after their guitarist and songwriter, Omar Rodriguez Lopez, bought a Ouija board in Jerusalem. They claimed that after they used the board to get a theme for their next album, strange and unexplainable events began to occur. Their studio flooded, their sound engineer had a nervous breakdown, and their lead singer, Cedric Bixler Zavala, injured his foot. To prevent any more bad luck, they buried the board, after which things went back to normal. According to Joshua Tucker's mother, her son, who killed 2 people, did so while he was possessed by Satan. She claimed in court that her son had recently played with a Ouija board and insisted that his possession was the reason for the murders. Given such an interesting but dark history, it is no wonder that Ouija boards are feared today. How to use a Ouija board to speak with the supernatural. Ouija boards are usually made of wood and contain numbers from 0 to 9 and the complete alphabet. They also have the words yes and no in the corners of the board and goodbye in the bottom part of the board. They also have a planchette, like the one we talked about earlier, but the hole is bigger to see the letter on the board. It is very easy to use the Ouija board. All you need is the board with the planchette, a few friends, and some candles. Turn off all your electronic devices and lights to make sure that the room is dark and quiet. Light the candle so that you can see the board. Decide on a speaker. The speaker will be the one who asks the question and talks to the supernatural. Sit around the board and gently place your fingers on the planchette. Move the planchette around the board a couple of times as warm-up. Before you start asking questions, you must announce that negative spirits are not welcome to communicate. It is recommended to start with simple yes or no questions and wait for the planchette to move. Never ask for physical signs from the spirits. It might be tempting to ask the spirit to flick off a candle or turn on a light to show that it exists, but asking for such signs might invite the spirits to stay in your room longer. It is important that they only use the Ouija board. And lastly, the most important step to finish playing with a Ouija board is to intentionally move the planchette over the goodbye. If you forget this step, the spirits might stick around, so make sure to say goodbye. The modern Ouija board, popularity and skepticism. Ouija boards have often held places of importance in horror movies. As we saw earlier with The Exorcist, they were first seen in the 1930 movie, The Bat Whispers, where the protagonist, Mrs. Van Gorder, uses a Ouija board with her housekeeper, Lizzie, after supernatural incidents occur in the house she rented. A makeshift Ouija board was used in the 1944 movie The Uninvited, where siblings Rick and Pamela Fitzgerald discovered that their seaside home in London is haunted. They conduct a seance by placing an upturned drinking glass on a table and surrounding it with Scrabble tiles from A to Z, and cards saying yes and no. The 1960 movie 13 Ghosts uses the Ouija board as an important plot point, as a family uses the board for fun but ends up discovering that their house is haunted by 13 ghosts who all intend to murder them. Satan's Blood, the 1978 Spanish film, shows a newly married couple, Ana and Andres, being invited to a Ouija session by a coven of devil worshippers who intend to take their soul. The Ouija board they use is similar to the makeshift one in The Uninvited. These are just some instances in movies. If you are interested in going on a horror movie binge where Ouija boards make an appearance, you can watch the movie released in 1984, The Devil's Gift, Don't Panic, which was released in 1988, Sorority House Massacre 2, Nighty Nightmare, released in 1999, Long Time Dead, released in 2002, Paranormal Activity, released in 2007, and Ouija, released in 2014. There are many, many more movies, as Ouija boards are unavoidable props in horror movies, so start binging now. Ouija board is currently sold by the popular toy company Hasbro, and most of the customers who buy these boards do not think that there is anything inherently evil with the board, while Ouija boards still have their staunch believers who think it is an effective instrument to talk with supernatural spirits. Many attribute the working of Ouija boards to the ideomotor phenomenon, where people make movements unconsciously. This has been supported by research which has found that the answers the Ouija board gives are usually things that the participants are thinking about.
Spirit, can you hear me?
Marvelous verdict. Whether it is just a psychological phenomenon or has a supernatural explanation, either way, you have to agree that Ouija boards are a lot of fun. They raise spirits at sleepy slumber parties, pun intended, and raise conversations at boring house parties. As we say goodbye to you, we at Marvelous Videos would like to remind you to always say goodbye after your Ouija session. Have you ever used a Ouija board? How was your experience? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.